Legally looking at this indictment, they have really locked in a way to find her guilty.
A former Georgia beauty queen is now accused of murdering her boyfriend's 18-month-old son, leaving the boy brain dead with severe disfigurement.
She's charged with the felony of aggravated battery, which is severe disfigurement of any human being. But it's also more harsh for her because it was an 18-month-old human being.
And experts say prosecutors have a strong case.
It's a slam dunk with the felony murder.
Gruesome details are now being revealed in the indictment, but all that's just the tip of the iceberg.
This indictment gave us more detail. I think as time progresses now, we might find more about going backwards. What happened in the past?
This is 18-year-old Trinity Poague, who made her rounds in the Georgia beauty queen circuit. She was crowned Miss Donaldsonville 2023 and even competed in the Miss National Peanut Festival. But 2024 brought some major changes for the one-time beauty queen when she was arrested in the murder of an 18-month-old boy. We first brought you the story back in January when Trinity was first charged with felony murder, aggravated battery, and first-degree cruelty to children. Since then, we've seen some shocking developments to the case and some major revelations.
When I first looked at this indictment, it looks to me like the prosecutor's very confident about the case. I printed it out. It's what I have here. And when I read through it, I thought, wow.
We spoke to criminal defense attorney Meg Strickler about the case. She's based in Atlanta's Fulton County, about 2.5 hours north of Americus, Georgia. There, Trinity was a freshman at Georgia Southwestern State University. Investigators say the murder actually happened on campus, inside a dorm room.
How Georgia works is they hit her with first-degree murder. I'm going to speak in more common law terms. Then they also hit her with the aggravated battery and the cruelty to children. And so they're like, if we're not going to get you here, we're going to get you here, or we're going to get you here. So she's being punched in every which way they can legally. And as a defense lawyer, it's a very strong indictment.
The case dates back to January 14th, when 18-month-old Romeo Angeles was rushed to the hospital. He was pronounced dead just days later. The boy's legal name is Romeo Angeles, but his family has referred to him by multiple different names, including Jackson Drew or Jackson Williams. Investigators say Trinity Poague was dating the boy's father and that she knowingly killed him. She was arrested and charged with aggravated battery, felony murder, and cruelty to children in the first degree, but just this month, she was indicted on additional charges. So it turns out that it was a grand jury that was involved in this. And for people who aren't familiar, I know that grand jury proceedings are kept behind closed doors, they're private, but what do you think went on there?
They probably had, a big room where they had people sitting in chairs, and then the prosecutor sitting up front with like a lectern and probably some sort of, visual arts of some sort. And they sat and went through the case, and they went through the elements of the case and said, we think we can prove this. And then the grand jury votes whether or not to formally charge. And it is closed. No defense lawyers are allowed there. But my guess is some sort of medical examiner was there to testify. The police of some sort, some detective maybe may have been there. There would have been 2 or 3 witnesses, my guess would be. And as you can tell, they've returned these charges. Now, later on, if they get more evidence, they can always supersede this, which means this is a word we use in Georgia, which is we're going to fix this. Let's pretend they made a mistake on some part of this, that they said, you know what, we learned more. There was something else that we want to add. They can follow up and re-indict the case with additional charges. I don't necessarily see anything here, but I'm making this up. But what if she had the child in December and had some sort of incident where they had gone to the doctor and there was some issue with, the baby fell and had a broken rib? That would come in as another count. And these things could be still being investigated at this juncture, as an example.
According to the indictment, Trinity Poague is now charged with malice murder, cruelty to children in the first degree, 2 counts of aggravated battery, and 2 counts of felony murder. When I was taking a look at the indictment, I saw malice murder and felony murder. Can you explain to me why she would be charged with both?
Yeah, yeah. Georgia has, and I shake my head because it's a very difficult charge for us lawyers. It's called the felony murder doctrine, and it's a common law concept. Is that if you commit a felony and that felony results in death, then you can be charged with felony murder. That's kind of a generic, vanilla version of it. But in real life here in Georgia, what hurts you is that she's charged with the felony of aggravated battery, which is severe disfigurement of any human being, but it's also more harsh for her because it was an 18-month-old human being. And then you also have the felony of cruelty to children. So that's like, so I'm saying legally looking at this indictment, they have really locked in a way to find her guilty. So you have the first degree murder, which is your normal vanilla intentional malice murder, which is you intended to murder this child. That's going to be the more difficult one to achieve at trial, because did she intend to kill the child? So that one is a bit of a reach, because I don't know if that's really what happened, but it's a slam dunk with the felony murder ones.
And in some cases, prosecutors doubled up on Trinity's charges. 2 counts of felony murder and 2 counts of aggravated battery. So I guess for the 2 counts of felony murder, my question is only one person was killed, so how can she have the 2 counts?
Oh, that's easy. The felony murder is again with the felony. So they looked at with you are getting felony murder with the aggravated battery. That's one. And you're getting the felony murder with the cruelty of children. There's 2.
The indictment didn't lay out exactly how the young boy was killed, but did provide clues into his death. Under the felony murder charge, Trinity is accused of, quote, inflicting blunt force trauma to the head and torso of Romeo Angeles. For one of the aggravated battery charges, prosecutors say Trinity, quote, did maliciously cause bodily harm to Romeo Angeles by causing serious disfigurement to his liver, a member of said person's body, and further, by rendering such member of his body useless. Under the other aggravated battery charge, Trinity allegedly, quote, did maliciously cause bodily harm to Romeo Angeles by rendering his brain, a member of said person's body, useless. One of the things that stood out to me immediately was that Trinity allegedly rendered his brain useless. What do you make of that?
I wrote that down. That's what I'm saying. This is a really bad indictment. When I read that, I actually wrote it down in my notes as, oh, ouch, because that's what's alleged just here. So if they were to go to trial, the first thing the prosecutor is going to write out in her opening statements is the elements, and they're going to say serious disfigurement, and then write in there like a hyphen. The evidence will show that we had serious disfigurement to his liver and rendered his brain useless and left the boy with massive trauma to his head and torso. That's just what's in the charging document. I mean, that's just what's to begin with. To be a juror on this case, it's going to be a lot to see, because you're going to see images of the baby. There's going to be photographs of the baby, but then there's going to be the x-rays, and then pictures of his liver and the scans of his liver. And then there'll be an expert explaining what those scans show. And then as a defense, we'll be looking at those same scans and saying, that's not true. That's not what caused it. That was potentially something he was born with. I don't know what the defense is yet, but that could be something. This will be a battle of experts no matter what, because they're saying that she caused all of this. And then her defense will be, no, I didn't. I don't know how successful that's going to be.
Just based on your experience looking through all of this severe trauma that went into this young boy's death, what would you say or hypothesize happened that caused it?
The only thing I can think of is, as you saw me do this, is that in these cases, the baby doesn't be quiet for whatever reason. And I'm just telling you from my other cases. I am not saying what happened here. You asked me what I think could have happened, but based on nothing of my knowledge of this case, I'm just giving you storylines from other cases, that the person already has some residual anger, and the anger just exploded. And so the anger where they just see black and they're not able to really be present at that moment. And they just go overboard on the abuse and just shake the kid. Could have knocked him down. That's why you have left the boy with massive trauma to his head, probably screaming at the kid and at the baby. I keep saying kid, and at the baby boy, and knocked him down. And so he probably banged his head on something. But it had to have been some severe shaking, my guess would be, or some severe, I don't think beating. I think it was more just some sort of just this. This is my thought from other cases. That's my thought. Literally, I want to give a caveat. That's just a thought. I really don't know in this case. I don't have any insider knowledge at all. But that's where you look at the medical documents. What we have to do is, I don't read medical documents. I have to hire somebody because I don't speak that language, and it's voluminous. It's piles and piles of medical records that I must ethically hire somebody to translate that and make it into a language I can understand, so then I can come up with a theory for defense. And that is really what both sides are going to need to do here. So whatever happened, it says January 14th. I mean, who knows? She's young. She may have her own mental health issues. I don't know.
Meg says the age of the victim will play a major role in this case. The victim in this case was 18 months old. So can you explain that to me? I know that obviously he was a child under the age of 18, but are there different brackets within those age groups under 18?
It's a vulnerable victim. When you're a vulnerable victim, that would be somebody over 65 or someone who's a child. And so it just has a separate subdirectory or a separate, letter in the statute that just makes the punishment more harsh. So the law is the same. When you read the statute, it says, causing serious disfigurement for aggravated battery. And in an adult, that'd be like a dislocated shoulder, a broken nose, broken anything is serious disfigurement in aggravated battery. But then once it's a vulnerable victim, which is the child part, he was 18 months old, it just aggravates the felony punishment that you would get if you were just charged with that.
And the location of the murder could be a factor too. And additionally, we've talked about how she was a student at Georgia Southwestern State University, and this actually happened in the dorm room. Then I wonder what the next steps are there. I mean, could the university be involved in any way? What happens now?
I can tell you, because I deal with a lot of universities here, there are more rules, period, with respect to being in a dorm. Was there a rule that didn't allow young children to even be there ever? I don't know. But if there was a rule, there could be some liability for not taking notice of that and getting rid of the child to not be in that dorm. I don't know the rules in that particular university, but that could be one issue. There could be another issue of who was near that world, who was in that floor, who saw what. That could be very pivotal. And of course, going back to forensics, what cameras do we have? What visuals do we have of her leaving that dorm with the baby that day to go and get medical help? All of that will be very helpful. And I know the university will have been very welcoming to say, here's what we have. And if there were some things that the university should have done, meaning, do we have rules to not let young people in? I don't think there is such a rule, because we all have little brothers, little sisters, nieces, and nephews. But overnight, those things. Did she allow this baby to stay overnight in the past? Those are the rules we want to examine. And I don't know what they are yet.
Meg believes the case will head to trial, and when it does, we will likely learn a lot more about the details. We also know that as prosecutors, they don't need a motive to secure a conviction. Sometimes it's nice to have, but it's not completely necessary. But in this case, I'm wondering if it might be useful for the prosecution to have some sort of motive in their back pocket to paint the picture better for the jury. What do you think?
Well, legally, yeah, you can form intent in, slap in a second. As fast as I did that can be intent. So I think in this context, they'll bring the boyfriend in because he's the father. All right. And so the story will keep brought in on how they met and all that, just because we have to kind of give the narrative. We need to fill in the entire storyline again for the jury to make the right decision. So he will be brought in on both sides, the goods, the bads, and the uglies. But, the fact that he exists is not any part of the storyline as far as I can tell yet. I mean, he did not cause this, other than he wasn't with the child at that moment. That's the only thing, and that's okay. You're allowed to not be with your baby 24/7. I mean, that's not a crime. I'm not with my children right now.
When the case does go to trial, Meg expects prosecutors to be masterfully prepared. Do you think they have any theory as to how she allegedly caused this major damage to this young boy?
They will. They'll come up with a theory. They may already have it. I don't know. Normally, in these kinds of cases, that's one of the things the expert does, is the forensics draw the storyline for them. So they'll be able to look at the various injuries and kind of come up with a reenactment of what they think by just simply looking at the images of the baby. There's the actual pictures, but then the internal injuries. I've seen that very often, and sometimes they'll even do a reenactment, with computers, and kind of show it what they think could have happened. And it could have been, it's not the baby's 18 months old. That's a large, human being at this point. So I don't know how this occurred, but they are going to go through that. There will be a forensic analysis of what they think occurred, and then it's up to the defense to say no, and use another expert to say, we look at this stuff, we look at the medical reports, we look at the coroner's reports, and we think this is what happens. And then it'll be the jury who decides what they think, looking at the version of the facts, and they will render a verdict.
But Trinity's team does have some options. From the defense's side of things, is it possible that they say this was an accident, the boy fell, this was not at the hands of our client, anything like that?
Yeah, the defense will be she's young. Perhaps, and again, I'm making this up, but perhaps it was like I just described. He fell in such a way that he landed on something that hit where the liver is and hit his head, and she panicked, and she went to the hospital, but didn't really describe what occurred because she was young and naive and not knowing the system. That's a good stretch. I don't think that's going to work out, but I do think, as a defense lawyer, what I would, in all of my time of defending this case, would be pointing out and humanizing her. We all are human here, okay? We're all people, and we all have our faults. And I'm not defending what she did that day. I'm just saying there's always a storyline from all sides. And what I would say to the jury is listen to all sides and then make your decision. Don't just stay focused on one part. Make sure you hear all parts. And one of the parts here is she was very young. She was not somebody who had really been out in the world long enough to have a great amount of experience in dealing with children. And it could have been as simple as that. I don't think so, but that would be part of how I might start my defense, is her youth and an inexperience with babies.
Meg says it's not likely Trinity's history as a beauty queen led to the crime, but it will probably be included at trial.
I mean, maybe there was something that occurred in her life. When you are in certain environments, there can be problems. I don't think there's something in the pageantry world that's not different than any other parts of our world that has bad elements. So I don't know how that would work into this, other than it will be who she is. So we will certainly bring it up. It'll come as, remember I said, we're humanizing her. We're humanizing the young 18-month-old boy. We're humanizing everybody part of this so that the jury does get all of the facts. That's important. But that's just who she is. But I don't think there's any element that impacted how we got to January 14th other than her life.
If Trinity is found guilty, Meg says there are a few options she could face. Let's say she is convicted on at least one or all of these counts. How much time could she be facing behind bars?
I mean, that's a hard question, because I will answer it as a lawyer, and then I will answer as what happens in real life. Okay. When she's got 6 counts, you can put them together, which is stacking. Okay. You can stack them up, kind of think of like Legos. And I'm not trying to say that, but just as a visual for you. And so you can add each amount, the maximum amount that she could be sentenced to for each one of them. And then that would be what she's be facing if she was found guilty on all counts, which is 100+ years life in prison without parole, some insane amount of time that goes beyond a human lifetime. All right. That's so I had to answer you as a lawyer. Now, what happens in real life is if she's found guilty of multiple counts, which my guess is, and I'm only guessing because I'm reading an indictment, but if they have evidence to support this, where her liver was, this child's liver was hurt in such a way that it caused a serious disfigurement, and also that he was brain dead horribly, all of these really bad allegations that are just in the indictment, if they're able to prove that, she probably would be found guilty of the felony murder, which is life with parole, life without parole. And that is a question that we decide after she's convicted.
But for now, we're still in the early stages of the judicial process. What do you think moving forward are the next steps in the case? We know that the defendant has since been released on bail or bond, so she's out, but what do we expect to happen from here?
My guess is that she'll have arraignment in the next 4 to 6 weeks. Normally the smaller counties will have it sooner. So she probably has arraignment in the next couple of weeks. An arraignment is just a formal day where she could go in and be read these charges, and then she can say not guilty or guilty. All of us say not guilty originally because that's just the procedure. It's not saying anything. It's just what we do first. Once we have that hearing, the next hearing is when things start to move more swiftly. The discovery will be given to the defense attorney. All of it should be given to the defense attorney, but there might be some still missing because of logistics. I don't know. Maybe there was a phone that got seized and got taken over to GBI. They may not have reviewed that yet because there's backlog. GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, is busy. So that may be a reason to the delay. So the next hearing in, say, September will be delayed for some logistical issue. So if she's going to go to trial, it'll probably be in 2025. This indictment gave us more detail. I think as time progresses now, we might find more about going backwards. What happened in the past? This was January of 2024. How did they meet? Did she have any other prior interactions with law enforcement? Those things will be very interesting to learn. And as time progresses, I think we're going to learn that. And it may add more wrinkles and more surprises as a result.
Back in February, Trinity was released on $75,000 bond. So far, her arraignment has not yet been scheduled. Reporting for Law&Crime, I'm Gillespie.